Morning, everybody. How we doing? Awesome. All right. So, like you, I was a scout growing up, and one of the things I learned that not only was great as a scout, was great as I was going through my military career, is just that reminder to be brilliant at the basics, right? So you're here at the National Jamboree, you've got to be brilliant at those basics. So sunscreen, because I can tell you I'm fair-skinned and the sun's been in my face almost the last hour and a half. Second thing, water. So I've got my bottle with me. Make sure you're drinking as we go through this presentation, especially as the heat picks up throughout the day. All right, with that being said, it's great to be with you. I'll go through my career a little bit more. I remember what it was like to be a scout, to be where you're sitting right now and being in an auditorium like this, right? You're listening to someone speak. And I also remember that you could have me listen for about 10, maybe 15 minutes, and then I'm looking at trees and I'm checking things out. So that's my intent. I want to give you about 15 minutes of what I've had a chance to learn as a leader in the military and as I move forward throughout my career. Some of the things that I thought really stood out, and I definitely want to make sure I'm tying those back to what you're doing right now in the scouting program. But what I really want to do is have that conversation with you. I want to reserve the last 20, 25 minutes to be able to pass that microphone around. You can ask questions, query me, challenges, things that you heard me talk about, you want to know more about. Anything is fair game. Happy to bring you up to speed. Sound fair? All right. So the thing that I really wanted to kind of start off with is just a little bit of perspective. So when I was a scout and I was sitting where you are right now, a lot of times I felt like I had tunnel vision, right? I was looking immediately at the thing I had in front of me. What am I doing the next hour? What am I doing the next day? Maybe the next week or two, but that was about as far as I was looking. And so one thing I really loved throughout my leadership journey in the military and scouts and beyond was the opportunity to basically ask senior leaders what they had experienced. Right, one of the best things you can do is you can learn from others who've already walked the path in front of you. And so whether I was a scout, whether I was a military officer, I love finding people who are 10, 20, 30, 40 years ahead of me on their journey and say, what did you learn? What do you wish you'd done differently? And it's funny because when you engage these men and women with those kinds of questions, almost to a person what they'd say is, man, if only I knew this when I was younger. If only I knew this when I was a teenager, if only I knew this when I was a young adult, it would have changed the course of my life. And so that's what I love about being a part of the Leadership Heights Speakers Program, is that's our opportunity to come back. We've walked your path, we've walked other paths in life, we can share our experiences, you can learn and grow from what we've seen, certainly the things we've done well, but I think just as, or maybe even more importantly, the areas where maybe we made mistakes, and you can learn from what we witnessed, and you can avoid those as you move forward in life. So with that being said, there's really only about two things that I want to start off with. I'll share a couple extra points at the end, and then we'll get to the Q&A. The first lesson that I want to talk about comes from my time as a Top Gun instructor. So you heard Brenna talk a little bit about my experience when I was coming up through Scouts. Just to fill you in, so I was Troop 28, Colleyville, Texas. I was part of the Longhorn Council. Had a chance to work my way through the Scout program. I was an Eagle Scout. Had a chance to be a member of the Order of the Arrow, had a chance to go and do Philmont towards the tail end of my time in scouting and experience that high adventure camp, right? So a lot of my career was because I was not only a Boy Scout, but an Eagle Scout. Whenever I was looking to go to college, I had a chance to apply to what we call the service academies. You've got West Point, you've got Colorado Springs for the Air Force. I happened to go to the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, and they have these selection boards. They have people who've been senior military leaders. They have people who've been leaders in industry. And members of Congress will bring them in so they can basically interview you to see if you'd be a good, suitable fit. And you're competing typically against maybe 20, 30, in my case, 60 other high school students who wanted to do that. And as you're doing the interview, my grades were maybe a little bit above average. My sports were basically average. And what really got their attention as they looked at my application was, wow, you were an Eagle Scout. And you also were a trail leader. Tell us about that experience. What was it like to be a trail leader at Philmont? What did you do? What kind of leadership challenges did you face? And they grabbed me afterwards once I'd been told that I'd been selected to go to the Naval Academy. They said, the reason you got our vote was because of those experiences. So everything you're doing right now, the things that you're learning, the way you're growing, not only as a scout, but as a future leader, are going to pay dividends, not only in the years to come, but as you continue to become more senior in life. So that's really the way I wanted to structure this. I've had decades to learn from some pretty fantastic leaders. And the one thing I've always liked to ask of any leader is, what do you wish that you'd known then? Right? Maybe you're a 4-star general, like one of my former bosses, Secretary of Defense Mattis. You know, he had a 34 plus year career in the United States Marine Corps. Now he's working in a presidential administration. The guy has seen a lot. Well, what did you wish you had known when you were younger? What kind of lessons did you see? What were some things that you'd like to have done differently, right? Because you can always learn from others' experiences, and even better, sometimes the mistakes that they've made. So I want to share a couple lessons that I learned throughout my journey. The first one came from my time as a Top Gun instructor. So just like Connor said, I spent about 20 years in the cockpit. I was a fighter pilot in the United States Navy. I rose through the ranks to become a commander. I commanded a squadron in Japan, and those were all fantastic experiences. But where I really felt like I was turbocharged in my leadership journey beyond scouting was as a Top Gun instructor. And certainly you bring pilots, you bring the guys and gals into the program to become a world-renowned pilot, right? You're going to give them all the skills to be the best in the cockpit they can possibly be. But you're also looking for those leaders, people who can serve and continue to serve into the future, who can motivate and inspire others. And so we had 3 ways that we would select Top Gun instructors and even Top Gun students. Those were talent, passion, and personality. So the first one is talent. When you're selecting someone for Top Gun, you've got to be at least of average, hopefully above average talent, because you have to be credible with what you do. If you're not credible in the cockpit, if you're not credible as a fighter pilot, you're going to have a hard time being a teacher and being a leader, because everyone's going to be looking to you for guidance. The second one is your passion. You have to be able to be passionate about what you do. If you're not, you're probably in the wrong job. And especially at Top Gun, we were flying 6 days a week. We'd come in and work Saturdays. Sometimes our days could be 11, 12, 13 hours long. And you're doing what you love, but you had to be passionate, because that's what got you up in the morning. That's what got you to work, got you engaged to inspire those around you. The third one may be, frankly, the most important. You may be the most talented individual. You may be incredibly passionate about what you do, but if your personality stinks, let's face it, if you're a jerk, no one's going to want to learn from you. They're not going to want to work with you. They're not going to want to work for you. And it's going to be very tough to be a teacher and an instructor as you go on in your career. So those are the things that I felt like Top Gun really instilled, the things I still look for when I'm evaluating who I want to work with, right? Their talent, their passion, and their personality. The second one I wanted to mention to you, and I think it's a bedrock principle, not only for success as a leader, but success in life as well. And it's born right here with scouting. So someone give me the Scouts motto. You bet. Be prepared. Some of the best leaders I've ever served with were the ones who were prepared. And we had several members of the audience at the very beginning talk about what leadership meant to them. And you kind of heard some of those themes, right? It's about service for others. When I was in your shoes as a scout, there was a period of time, especially when I was new to scouting, where I felt like being a leader was just being the boss. You were in charge, right? You told people what to do, you expected them to do it, and then at the end of the day, a lot of times you're looking for that credit. And then you mature. You mature in scouting, you mature as you go through life, and you have your leadership experiences, and you realize that's not at all what it's about. It's actually inverted. What you do as a leader is you serve others. You enable their success. And so one of the things we always talked about was that you never want to be a roadblock for those that you lead, right? If you're the leader, a lot of times what your people can accomplish is going to be limited by you. So the Scouts motto came in incredibly handy during my path as a leader, because you always wanted to be prepared. You wanted to be thinking ahead. You wanted to be taking a look at some of the lessons that you knew were coming up. How can I plan for something that's happening months down the road? And you're starting to get some of that right now in scouting, right? You're going through your merit badges. Maybe you're a patrol leader, a senior patrol leader. You have those responsibilities, and it's not about you. It's about how do you enable success for others. And some of the very best leaders that I saw enabled that tenet. There's a lot of other things we could get into, and I really want to be able to move into the question and answer portion, because I think that's what's the best part I've seen of the previous days' experiences, right? It's that communication, the dialogue that we can have, the questions you can ask. But I'll leave you with some additional thoughts that I have found to be very important with leadership, just some kind of one-liners, if you will. One of the things that will always work well for you as a leader, but especially during your time in scouting and beyond, is being brilliant at the basics. Sometimes it's overwhelming. You step into a new role, you've got a new leadership position, maybe a new job or a new experience, and you feel this pressure to want to be able to do everything all at once. And the reality is you can't. I've made mistakes throughout my career. I've made mistakes in life. You face those pressures, and the reality is the best thing you can do is kind of fall back to being brilliant at those basics. For me, I actually found a lot of comfort as I went through my military career, falling back on what I learned in scouting, right? The Scout's Law. You go through those 12 key principles, and it was a great guidepost for the things that I wanted to make sure I stayed engaged with as I moved forward. The other thing you can think about is a lot of great leaders stay calm under pressure. I had a squadron commander. I was stationed in Japan. We were flying operations off of the aircraft carrier, right? So that's what makes us fairly unique in the United States Navy and for some of the U.S. Marines who fly fighter jets, is that you go on these aircraft carriers and you go out in the middle of the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean, maybe over to the Middle East, and you conduct flight operations. So you take off from an aircraft carrier, you're sitting there at 0 miles per hour, and all of a sudden it shoots you up to about 300 miles per hour in about 2 seconds, which is the best roller coaster ride you could imagine. You go off, you do your mission, you turn right back around, and you land, and then you do your debrief and you move on. We said one of the best leaders we'd ever served with was one of our squadron commanders, because anything could happen, and as a leader, he was going to remain calm. He was going to stay calm under pressure. And so we always joke that you could run up to him in the ready room, which is where all the pilots stay, and you could say, "Sir, we just won the Navy's biggest award." And he kind of nod and look at you and say, "Okay, yeah, thanks. Let me know if there's any updates." You could also run into the ready room and say, "Sir, massive accident just happened. We had an aircraft, hit the ramp, and now there's things we have to handle. It's an emergency." And he would do the same thing. He'd be like, "Okay, thanks. Keep me posted with what's going on." And so those are some of those key things that you can think about as you rise through your leadership experiences. Staying calm under pressure, being brilliant at the basics, realizing that those elements of the Scout Law are going to be critically important for you, because that's what's going to enable your success as a leader, right? Being trustworthy, being loyal, being brave, obedient, cheerful, all those things start folding in to what you'll experience in the years to come. So the last thing I want to mention before we move into Q&A is the best resources that you can reach into. So I mentioned I've been studying leadership for a couple decades now, and I love quizzing people, what was it you wish you knew then? And almost to a person, what they'll say is, I really wish I'd asked more questions when I was younger. Because the reality is, some of the best resources that you have right now as scouts are in this audience with you. It's the adult leaders. It's the ones who have been walking that path for years, sometimes decades more than you have, and it's a free resource. You can reach out and you can ask those kinds of questions. You can say, "Hey, what's your job? What do you do in your daily life? What did you learn from that experience? What kind of leadership challenges have you faced? If you could do things over again, what are maybe a few things that you've learned that you'd like to have done differently?" Right? You can learn from their experiences, you can tease out those lessons, and you can determine how you want to evolve as a leader. One of our speakers yesterday mentioned that there's something on the order of like 90,000 leadership books when you do a Google search. And I think there's a reason for that. Not only is it a popular topic, but it's also because leadership is a very unique pursuit. It's somewhat unique to everybody. There are some fundamental traits or some fundamental things you can do that will help make you successful as a leader. But at the same time, you will learn and grow. You'll figure out what works for you, the things that you like and you feel that resonate, and you'll also figure out the things that you'll just push to the side. And in the military, we always say, you're putting those tools in your toolkit. You're picking up the things that work for you, and you're moving on.